Hey everyone, welcome back to part 3. In part 3, we are going to cover blackbasing, which is a really beautiful way to weather your models. It's actually my preferred way of weathering models. I love it so much. I think the results you get from this method are so good that I typically don't do a lot of weathering after this. I just stick with this, add in a wash, and I'm usually done. I mean, just the results are so fantastic. Blackbasing was popular years ago, then it kind of died down, and now it seems to have made a return. So a lot of modelers are doing blackbasing, and it produces great results. So the way to blackbase is just take some really thinned white paint, and just keep the airbrush moving, jerk it around your hand, and aim for the middle of the panels. You're not trying to cover up the panel lines, so you're just aiming for the middle of the panels. It's almost like reverse pre-shading. Instead of covering the panel lines, you're covering everything else but the panel lines. And you just want to keep moving. You want to get this patchy, like, inconsistent effect. And it looks bad right now. I agree. I mean, I think that people get freaked out, but when you put the camo on top of it, it's going to look fantastic. It's going to give you a really, really beautiful result, vibrant result actually. And when you with blackbasing, if you have a display cabinet, and you put your model under the display cabinet lights, it just looks captivating. People are going to be drawn to the model more than any of the other modeling weathering techniques that I've shown you guys, the other two stuff. This is the one that really, I think, produces the most visual, stunning, captivating look. But I will say, I think it's the least realistic, in my opinion. And again, this is all my opinion, and a lot of modeling is just what your preference and your opinions are. I don't think it's the most realistic weathering style. I don't see a lot of airplanes. As I said, I work in a hangar. I don't see how airplanes weathering this in this manner. Maybe in certain spots, but not generally all over the airplane. Pre-shading is the method, or the kind of look that I see airplanes following when they're weathering. But this method just produces such a vibrant result. I love it. It's my go-to. And it's very, very easy. Now, look at how fast I was able to get this wing done. I will say that if you have a large airplane model, your hands are going to get tired. So I recommend getting a modeling template. They sell them online nowadays. They're metal, and at first the tank modelers guys were using them to create modeling effects and such for bases, and the World War II guys were using them. Well, you can use them to spray white and create a modeling effect that way. So it makes it so much easier than having to do that by hand, especially on a large model. You tire yourself out. So quick recommendation, and they're fairly cheap. They go for about $10. I actually have one. I couldn't find it for this video, so I just did it by hand. So it's not a big deal. Again, it's just a small piece. So as you can see with the light armor, I'm going in with the wet coat as always. Not a heavy wet coat, a light wet coat. You always want your paint to go on wet, not dry. It's going to have a pebbly finish. So going in and just covering the area, nice thin coats, and you can see. And on the light side of the camo, I always do to cover go in heavy-handed to show you what it looks like when you do more of a coverage. And you can still see that it gives a beautiful result. You can see the panel lines are popping. You can see the paint is a little bit off, like some areas are darker and lighter, and it gives a really nice effect of bleached and worn out. So it's really, really gorgeous. Now, having mentioned earlier, this is my favorite method. I find it such a good look that I typically don't go beyond this as far as weathering my model. I will most likely put a gloss coat on this, and then go ahead and add in a wash. But I don't find a need, to be honest, to add in other weathering techniques. I don't go in and then fade the panels more, or use oil paints and create filters or anything like that. I think this alone produces such a beautiful weathered look. I don't need to do that. It's I think just easy that way, and now I kind of understand why it's making a comeback, because it's just a quick way to produce a beautiful result and weathering effect for your model. So what I'm doing now is I'm getting ready to put in the second shade, and I just sprayed. Again, you can mask over Fileos pretty easily. You know, it's already dry. I'm not too worried about it. Just attack the paint, the tape, I mean, I'm sorry. And it should be okay. Don't be heavy-handed when you rip the tape off, and the paint will be fine. Normally, I will say I give it about 10 minutes. It's always good to give paint a little bit of time to dry out a little bit, but for this demonstration, I'm just going to go in quickly. The paint's already dry to the touch, by the way, if you haven't figured it out. I will say if you're doing, if you're going to handle your model a lot, I don't care what type of paint you're using, you want to use gloves. Sweat will erode paint. I don't know what there is in human sweat that does that, but yeah, it does it. So always be careful when handling your model once it's painted. You don't want to get to that point and then ruin it because your sweat, you know, eroded the paint or whatever. It happens with any type of paint, solvent, acrylic, it doesn't matter. So just be aware of that when you're handling your model more long term and such, and you haven't put a flat coat on top of it. So I'm getting the second paint ready. I have 5 airbrushes, and I always load them, preload them for these videos. I forgot to load it, so apologies, you know, that you're just staring at the wing there. But while you're staring at the wing, I want you to notice the different areas in the wing. Like some areas there's a little bit of whiteness, some areas look a little bit like gray, and that towards the tip of the wing you can see it's more darker. And this is the other great thing about blackbasing: you can control the kind of look of the weather you want. So if you really want it to be a dirty look, this is the kind of style you want to go for. If you don't want it to be as dirty, add in more white and it will tone it down, and you know, it won't be as dirty and weather looking. And in this side, I'm going to use the darker camo to highlight, as I've done with the other videos, and I'm not going to go in as hard as I did on the light side. So you're going to see what it looks like when you do you know, you're not trying to cover it as much, and you're going to see a beautiful weathered side here. And the lighter side is beautifully weathered too. If you notice, the panel lines are really popping, the areas are really popping, even some of the little hatches, you can see they kind of stand out. Hopefully you can see. Again, my camera's not that great, but it looks fantastic in real life. It really does. Again, I don't think it's realistic in real life. You know, having worked with airplanes and currently working in a hangar, but it does produce a great look, and you can see that in the dark side now. You can see the panel lines, the paint just pops. It just is gorgeous. And if this was something I was working on, I think I wouldn't even bother post shading the paint or doing anything else. I would just stop here, put on my gloss coat, and you know, put in my wash and call it done. Look at the dark side of the wing. Just that alone, I think, is fantastic. So again, that's blackbasing for you. So I hope you guys learned, and I hope you liked the video. Please let me know what you think.